Hey everyone, this is Sarbjeet. You may be watching this training session either in our Facebook group or YouTube channel. The topic of our training session today is release management. I've had lots of questions on my YouTube channel come across to me about this topic, and I wanted to go ahead and provide some training and some context around this. So if you're watching me live, please let me know in the comments that you are watching me live. And if you are watching this or catching this on a replay, also let me know that you're catching this on a replay. And if you are catching this on a replay, let me know if you have any questions or comments, and I will get back to your comments later. If you are watching me live, please, as always, put comments in. I'm monitoring them, the live session on my phone, and we'll be able to get to your questions during the session. So if there's no questions at the moment, I'll go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen. I did create some slides for you guys to talk through about what release management is. And what I'm going to cover today is from the aspect of business analyst and Scrum Master domains, right? So it is definitely something that is a lot broader, right, than I'm going to cover, because there's a lot more things that developers and other technical leads do that I'm not going to cover. I'm only covering release management in the role of a business analyst and Scrum Master, because that is the roles that I'm most familiar with. So with that, let's get started. I share my screen here with you guys. So what is release management, right? So before we talk about release management, we need to understand a few environments, right? In terms of what are the three environments that we have? We have generally in software development lifecycle, whether you're in waterfall or in the agile environment, there are three environments generally that we work in. We have something called the dev environment. This is where our programmers or developers are coding and programming is taking place. We have people that are in the test environment. This is where developers are done testing, or testing is being done. And then we have the production environment, which is the live environment where our end users are using the system. So if it's an in-house system, the production is where our employees are using that system. And if this is a system that is for the general public, then the prod environment is where the general public is using this tool or system. Release management and planning happens when we're done with testing, right? When we're ready to introduce our baby, which is our product, to the world, and we're ready to put that project into production, right? So release management is generally the tail end of our program or project when we're ready to put it into production. In general terms for release management, there's many different terms used in the industry, so I'll cover a few that are most common. Some of them are called cutover, implementation planning, deployment planning, or deployment, bringing systems online, and even go live, right? So there's many different terms used in the industry here. These are just some of them. There may be more that I don't have listed here, but in general, there's a lot of different terms that could be used for release management. So when does release planning start? It starts when we have sign off on QA, when we have sign off on UAT is when release planning can start. We can start thinking about release planning when QA has sign off, but generally UAT is the last level of testing that we do before we put anything into production. And so generally when we have UAT sign off, we have sign off from our stakeholders to let us know that we're ready to move into production. So we understand IT teams, timeframes. Typically the norm of the company is where you work in. We plan for customer validation, which depends on which is generally different from project to project. So what is customer validation? Customer validation generally happens after we go live, right? This is for the customers or your stakeholders to come online to the system and let us know how the system has gone. So let me just refresh my phone and make sure there's no comments so far. Refresh my phone and make sure there's no. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for watching live. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't a question. So What is customer validation? Customer validation happens after we go live, after we release into production, and generally it's when you have your stakeholders or your team members that use the product come online and make sure that the changes that were implemented or introduced to production are working as they are planned and should be planned. We generally have a go, no-go decision, right? And this is after we cut over, after customer validation happens, we generally have a meeting with our leadership to say, we have signed off from UAT, we have released into production, our stakeholders have signed off on the product, and we are ready to now move forward with a go decision. Not all projects have go, no-go decisions. Usually we see these things in much bigger projects where there's a lot at stake. For smaller projects or smaller implementations, we may not have a go, no-go decision. So it all entirely depends on your organization and the types of projects that you are releasing, and then plan to release whenever that may be, right? So generally, these are the things that we are thinking about when we think about release planning. So what is it that, what is IT teams and timeframes? So what generally IT teams have to consider is whether we have to, sometimes we can release code into production without bringing the systems down. Most of the time, if your project is bigger in scope and, depends on the type of environment that you're in and the types of systems that you're cutting over, there may be a need to bring systems down, and there may be a need to have the ability to push code during when systems are live, right? So do systems need to be brought down to release code into production? That's something that your technical teams can help you understand, but that's definitely a question business analysts or Scrum Masters should be asking during release planning. And what does code programming, when does code or programming cutover need to happen? So generally, let's, for example, say that you do need to bring systems down, right, from making sure that there's no active stakeholders on the system. When does that take place, right? Does it take place on Friday afternoons? Does it take place Friday night, so to make sure that we minimize the impact to our users, right? So these are the things that you guys need to think about when we're thinking about release planning is, do systems need to be brought down? And if so, what is a typical time frame that we do that? For some of the projects that I worked on, Sunday evenings are a critical time when a lot of our users are using the system. So that is absolutely out of the question. We generally don't ever want to implement anything on Sunday evenings because we have a lot of our users coming online. So, your technical resources are the best bet to tell you, to help you figure out when the traffic is at the lowest point. Of course, we communicate to our stakeholders if we have to bring the systems down, but this is in an effort for us to figure out when we figure out when to plan for cutover if we do need to bring the systems down. So what is customer validation? Typically, after we introduce new code, programming, product, we want our customers or stakeholders or product owners to do customer validation to make sure that the program or the project is performing as expected. Customer validation can look very different for different projects. Examples include customer validation could be just logging into the system and just making sure that everything looks okay. Customer validation could be, creating a new customer in the system. Customer validation could be doing end-to-end testing. So it all really depends on the organization and the type of projects that you're working on and what you have ability to do in the production environment, right? I have worked on projects where we cannot, as our customers, because the systems are for the general public, we cannot create new accounts to test, right? But we could look at existing accounts to make sure that the changes that needed to take place have taken place. So generally, customer validation can look very different for different organizations and depends on the type of project that you're working on. What's a go, no-go decision? Generally, we have leadership and the entire project team attend this meeting. Go, no-go decision is after we have moved things to production, after customer validation is complete, we have key sponsors provide results of customer validation. And at this time, we discuss any defects, if any. Lots of you guys think that there are no defects when we go live, but generally there are either minor defects that we have, or there could be a defect that we are aware of, and we need to discuss with leadership if we can move forward with the release, or do we need to roll it back. So these are the types of things that we discuss at go, no go decisions. If we have a go, we continue with the release. If we have a no go, then we roll the systems back to make sure that everything is working as it should. Examples of release plan or implementation plan. This is something that I just made up, right? Generally, we have a task level item. We identify the task, we identify the resources, the start and the end times to make sure that we're going through and identifying, things like XYZ system offline. Who's the assigned resource? What time is it going to start? What time is it going to end? And generally, as a BA or as a PM, you would be monitoring status of your deployment on your project. So, things like start build is the ops team assigned team member is going to start at 8:30 after the systems become offline. And that's going to happen until 12 a.m. And at 12 a.m., once the build is complete, they're going to communicate, our team members are going to communicate to us that the build is complete. We do health checks, we do customer validation at 6:30 in the morning. We have a go, no go call with leadership at 7:15, and then we continue processing continue communicating that the release either has been successful or has not been successful. So this is a sample of what a release plan may look like. And that's all I have for you, you guys. Let me know if you have any questions. Again, in a nutshell, release management is all about planning for releasing the software or the functionality that you guys have been working on into production. Release planning all includes making sure you understand what needs to happen at deployment, making sure that the resources that you need are available to you, making sure that the times of the deployment efforts and deployment night is all covered throughout the life cycle of deployment, and it continues to work through the process. So let me know. I'll pause there for any questions you might have. Let me refresh and make sure that there are no more questions in the comments area. And that's all I have covered for you guys today. Let me know if not now, let me know questions in the comments, and I'll be happy to go through and provide answers for you as soon as I can. All right, thank you so much. This was one of the comments that I had in what topics you guys like to learn about. And we have for the whole, I think up until October, we have a weekly schedule on the topics that you guys told me you wanted to learn about. And then I'll do another post to see what other topics we should be talking about as we get closer to the finish line for these topics. Okay. Again, most of our training sessions are Sundays. Next week, there is no session. I'm traveling out of town, but usually our live sessions take place on Sundays around 11 to 12 p.m. PST. Okay. Okay, no comments so far. Again, thank you so much for those watching us live. Oh, there is a question. If it's an agile project, is any ticket or separate Jira board open for release management? So I am not aware. In the projects that I work in, what we do is when we do release management or release planning, we so generally in the agile environment, and in the agile environment that I've been part of, we have sprints, right? So let's say we have 3 sprints and now we have a release. What we do is we gather the sprints. So sprints, as they're completed, they're in a parking lot. And what we do is we add, instead of creating a sprint, we create a new dashboard in Jira to identify all the user stories that are part of that sprint. And we make sure that we line those up So that way, when we do production checkouts with our stakeholders, we can give them a list of all the user stories that are part of the release. They can go through and do validation. So we do have a dashboard for release planning and management to make sure that all the user stories from the 3 sprints that are included in that release are all then parked there. And once the release is successful and completed, then we can, mark those completed. Let me know if that answers your question, and let me know if there's any other questions there for us. Okay, I don't see any more questions. If you have them later, let me know in the comments and I'll be more than happy to go back and review and provide a response. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you guys. It's a pleasure to help you understand these concepts. Please let me know through the comments what other topics you're interested in learning about. All right, that's all for today. Thank you, everyone. I'll see you next week. Bye.